Alright, hello. I'm gonna read today a chapter out of Peter Pan. I'm not sure you can see the title. There we go. The chapter is not that long, so let's get into it. Peter breaks through. All children, except one, grow up. They soon know that they will grow up, and the way Winnie knew was this. One day, when she was 2 years old, she was playing in a garden, and she plucked another flower and ran with it to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for Mrs. Darling put her hand to her heart and cried, "Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?" This was all what had passed between them on the subject, but henceforth, when they knew that she must grow up, you always know after you're two is the beginning of the end. Of course, they lived at 14, and until Wendy came, her mother was the chief one. She was a lovely lady, with a romantic mind and such a sweet mocking mouth. Her romantic mind was like the tiny boxes, one within the other, that come from the puzzling East. However many you discover, there is always one more, and her sweet mocking mind had one kiss on that Wendy could never get. There it was, perfectly conspicuous in the right-hand corner. The way Mr. Darling wondered was this. The many gentlemen who had been boys when she was a girl discovered simultaneously that they loved her, and they all ran to her house to propose to her, excepting Mr. Darling, who took a cab and nipped in first. And so he got her. He got all of her, except the innermost box and the kiss. He never knew about the box, and in time he gave up trying for the kiss. When he thought Napoleon could have got it, but I can picture him trying, and then going off in passion, slamming the door. Mr. Darling used to boast to Wendy that her mother not only loved him, but respected him. He was one of those deep ones who knows about stocks and shares. Of course, no one really knows, but he quite seemed to know. And he often said stocks were up and shares were down, in a way that would make any woman respect him. Mrs. Darling was married in white, and at first she kept the books perfectly, almost gleefully, as if it were a game, not so much as Brussels sprout was missing. But by and by, whole cauliflowers dropped out, and instead of them, there were pictures of babies without faces. She threw them when she should have been totting up. They were Mrs. Darling's guesses. Wendy came first, then John, then Michael. For a week or two after Wendy came, it was doubtful whether they could be able to keep her, as she was another moment to feed. Mr. Darling was frightfully proud of her, but he was very honourable, and he sat on the edge of Mrs. Darling's bed, holding her hand and calculating the expenses, while she looked at him imploringly. She wanted to risk it, come what might, but that was not his way. His way was to write with a pencil and a piece of paper, and if she confused him with suggestions, he has to begin at the beginning again. "Now don't interrupt," he would beg of her. "I have £1.17 here, and £2.16 at the office. I can cut off my coffee at the office. Say 10 shillings, making 2, 9, and 6, which are 18, and 3 makes 397, with 5 knots in my checkbook makes 897. With that moving 897 dot and carry 7. Don't speak my own." And the pound she lent the man who came to the say 997? Yes, I said 997. The question is, can we try it for a year on 997? Of course we can, she cried. But she was prejudiced in Wendy's favor, and she was really the grander character of the two. Remember, Mumps? He warned her almost threateningly. And off he went again. Mumps, £1. That is what I've put down, but I dare say it will be more like 13 shillings. Don't speak. Measles 1.5. German measles half a guinea makes 2.50. 15.6. Don't waggle your finger. Whooping cough. Say 15 shillings. And so on it went, and it added up differently each time. But at last, Wendy just got 2, with Mums reduced to 12.6, and the kinds of measles treated as 1. There was the same excitement over John and Michael, had even a narrowing squeak, but both were kept, and soon you might have seen the 3 of them going in the row to Miss Fullingston's kindergarten school, accompanied by the nurse. Mrs. Darling loved to have everything just so, and Mr. Darling had a passion for being exactly like his neighbors, so of course they had a nurse. As they were poor, owing to the amount of milk the children drank, this nurse was Prim, Newfoundland dog called Nana, who had belonged to one in particular until the Darlings engaged her. She'd always thought children important, however, and the Darlings had become acquainted with her in Kennington Gardens, where she spent most of her spare time peeping into perambulators, and was much hated by careless nursemaids, whom she followed to their homes and complained of to their mistresses. She provided to be quiet and treasure of a nurse, how thorough she was at bedtime, and up at any moment of the night if one of her charges made the slightest cry. Of course her kennel was in the nursery. She had a genius for knowing when a cough is a thing to have no patience with, and when it needs stocking around your throat. She believed to her last day in old-fashioned remedies, like rhubarb leaf, and make sounds of content over all this newfangled talk about germs and so on. It was a lesson in propriety to see her escorting Flamingo with the lagoons flying over it. Talk about germs and so on. It was a lesson in property to see her escorting these children to school, walking steadily by their side when they were well behaved, and putting them back into line if they stayed. On John's footer days she never once forgot his sweater, but she usually carried an umbrella in her mouth in case of rain. There is a room in the basement of Miss Folsom's school where the nurses wait. They sit on forms while Nana lay on the floor, but that was the only difference. They affected to ignore her as of an inferior social status to themselves, and so she despised their small light talk. She resented visiting the nursery from Mrs. Darling's friends, but if they did come, she first whipped off Michael's pinafore and put him into the one with the blue braiding, and a smoothened out Wendy made a dash at John's hair. No noise outside on the sands, Michael in a wigwam, Wendy in a house of leaves, definitely sewn together. Jill had no friends, Michael had friends at night. Wendy had a pet wolf forsaken by its parents, but on the whole, the Neverlands have a family resemblance, and if they stood still in a row, you could say of them that they have each other's nose, and so forth. On these magic shores, children at play are forever beaching their coracles. We too have been there. We can still hear the sound of the surf. Though we shall land no more. Of all the elective islands, the Neverland is the snuggest and most compact. Not large and sprightly, with tenuous distances between one adventure and the other, but nicely termed. When you play at it by day with the chairs and tablecloth, it is not in the least alarming, but in 2 minutes before you go to sleep, it becomes very nearly real. This is why there are night lights occasionally in your travels through her children's mind. Mrs. Darling found things she could not understand, and of those quite the most perplexed was the word Peter. She knew of no Peter, and yet he was there, and there in John and Michael's minds. While Wendy began to be crowded all over with him, the name stood out in bolder letters than any of the other words, and as Mrs. Darling gazed, she felt as it had a mostly cocky appearance. Yes, he's rather cocky, Wendy admitted with regret. Her mother had been questioning her. But who is he, my pet? He is Peter Pan, mother. At first, Mrs. Darling did not know, but after thinking back into her childhood, she just remembered a Peter Pan who was said to live with the fairies. There were odd stories about him, as that when children died, he went part of the way with them, so that they should not be frightened. She had believed in him at the time, but now that she was married and full of sense, she quite doubted whenever there was any such person. Besides, she said to Wendy, he would be grown up by this time. Oh no, he isn't grown up, Wendy assured her confidently, and he is just my size. She meant that he was her size in both mind and body. She didn't know how she knew it. She just knew it. Mrs. Darling consulted Mr. Darling, but he smiled. Pooh-pooh. Mark my words, he said. It is some nonsense now I have been putting in their heads. Just a sort of idea and talk would have. Leave it alone, and it will blow over. But it will not blow over, and soon the troublesome boy gave Mrs. Darling quite a shock. Children have a strangest adventure without being troubled by them. For instance, they may remember to mention, a week after the event happened, that when they were in the woods, they met their dead father, and how they came with him. It was in a casual way that Wendy one morning made this quietening revelation. Some leaves of the tree had been found on the nursery floor, which certainly were not there when the children went to bed, and Mrs. Darling was puzzled over them when Wendy said with a tolerant smile, I do believe it is that Peter again. Whatever do you mean, Wendy? It's so naughty of him to not wipe, Wendy said, signing. She was a tidy child. She explained in quite a matter-of-fact way that she thought Peter sometimes came to the nursery in the night and sat on the foot of her bed, played on his pipes to her. Unfortunately, she never woke, so she didn't know how she knew. She just knew. What nonsense you talk, precious. No one gets into the house without knocking. I think In the nursery dimly